Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to my show, High Road to Humanity. In every episode, I tell you powerful true stories filled with great wisdom that you can use in your own life as you strive for a higher road to travel. My featured guests will have their own unique stories to tell that enlighten your mind and your soul. So kick back, relax, and learn the secret to success when you take the high road.
First touch, strong connection, it lays deep in your soul.
Hi, this is Nancy Yearout, and welcome to High Road to Humanity. I have Dr. Scott Taylor here today, and I'm very excited he's here. And welcome, Scott, to High Road to Humanity.
Hey, Nancy, I've been looking forward to this, so I'm so glad you invited me on the show.
Well, I'm glad you're here. You guys sit back and relax. Let me give you a little information about Dr. Scott Taylor. He is the president of the Expanded Awareness Institute. It's EAI, and it helps people interested in near-death and shared-death experiences explore what that experience means to them and to our culture as a whole. So this is going to be really interesting, you guys. His gift is the ability to make the exploration of the non-physical universe accessible to the curious. And I'm a curious one, and I know you guys are too, so this can be fun. He is an expert in the use of binaural beat technology, which I don't know what that is, so we're going to find out today. And that's to achieve, he says, and to hold expanded states of consciousness. So Scott's gift is the ability to make the exploration of the non-physical universe accessible to us. And so we're super glad he's here. Scott, what is your story? Like, when did you have a near-death experience? How old were you?
Hi there. Technically, it's a shared death experience. It took place in my late 20s, and uh, I was in love with a woman. Her name was Mary Frances Randall.
Okay.
And Mary Fran and her son Nolan, who had just turned 7, were coming back from a beautiful day of sailing on Lake Washington in southern Minnesota.
Okay.
And on their way home, they were involved in this horrific car accident.
Oh, man.
And Mary Fran was killed outright, and Nolan sustained a mortal head wound, and it took him 6 days to make his transition. That becomes important because Mary Fran was one of 9 kids, and Nolan was the eldest grandchild in the family. And so this whole family wanted to come and be with Nolan, hold vigil with him, and, in general, support Nolan and support each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because there were so many in Mary Fran's family, I mean, think of it. We got brothers and sisters, which meant there's boyfriends and girlfriends and spouses and uncles and aunts and grandparents and neighbors and friends. There were a lot of people at Mayo in Rochester where they received their care. So many that we decided that it was crazy because he was in a little hospital room. And so we said, okay, here we go. We're going to have 2 of us go in every 2 hours and just be with him.
Okay.
And the nurse on the floor had been really quite clear that Nolan was in a coma. He never did come out of the coma. But she said, hearing is the last sense to go. So when you're
Really?
when you're in visiting with Nolan, there's a very good chance that he can hear you, but not being able to respond.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. So my shift was from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. on the morning of the 6th day. And I was paired up with Janny, which was Mary Fran's oldest sister. And we went into the room at the appointed time, and we had with us his favorite storybook. So we read him stories. We told him about what was going on with all of the people who had come to visit him, so he knew. And in particular, it was great because that evening, the brothers had gone throughout the Mayos, healthcare system and swiped all the cushions off the couches so that they could put them on the floor of the waiting room and be comfortable while they were, taking a nap.
Oh,
So
that's funny.
yeah, and so we could tell him stories like that.
How old was he? Can I ask that?
7. He had
7.
just turned 7,
Okay.
and so it gets to be about 4:45, and Janny, who is a nurse trained in trauma care, goes to the end of the bed, picks up his chart, and is reading it, and then is taking a look at all the monitors that are surrounding the bed.
Mm-hmm.
And she just, she gave me that look,
Yeah.
and held out her hand and said, "Scott, it's time for us to say goodbye."
Mm.
And so we pulled up a couple chairs next to Nolan's head, and we told him that we were so proud of him that he had fought so hard for 6 days to try to be with us, and that we loved him dearly. And if his mother should come, remembering that she died 6 days before at the
Right.
scene of the accident,
Mm-hmm.
that if his mother should come and pick him up and say that he should go with her, that would be the right thing to do.
Oh, nice.
That if Mary Fran came and asked Nolan to go with her, he should do that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got done doing this, it's now 5 o'clock in the morning. The next shift is coming in, and Janny and I left, and we went to try to find a couple of empty cushions on the floor to kind of rest up. Well, it wasn't, 45 minutes later, Nancy, that we were disturbed by the nurse on the floor. She came into the room and said, "It's time. His vital signs are starting to go down, and it shouldn't be much longer. So, it's time to go in and be with him and say goodbye."
Okay.
So we did, and you know, I don't know, there's 40 of us, 50 of us or something. It was
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That's what I'm saying. And so, as it turns out, I was one of the last people in line and one of the last people to get into the room. And it was already 4 or 5 deep around the bed when I got there. So I went, "Well, that's nutty." So I just decided to sit on the windowsill, next to Willie, who was Mary Fran's youngest brother. And I don't know if you or any of the people watching the show have done this, but in Nolan's case, that that progression was really slow. I mean, all there really was to do in the room was to sit there, and then watch the
Mm-hmm. The
the heart
monitor.
monitor,
Mm-hmm.
and it slowly decreased and decreased, and then finally it just flatlined. And when Nolan flatlined, what I experienced was Mary Fran coming across the veil and scooping her son out of his physical body.
Oh.
And the two of them had this exquisite reunion. And it surprised me because I was able to participate in what was going on between the two of them.
Did you see her physically?
Yes and no. Um, it was more of an energy signature than it was a visual signature.
Okay.
I
I say this because my dad passed and I was in the living room and he was in another state and I looked up and I saw him.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, and so I think it's like what I did. I saw him standing there and he waved at me, but it wasn't like he was there. It was like a vision. Is that what you saw too? Like a vision kind of?
Nope.
No. Okay.
So in near death experiences and now in shared death experiences, what we know is that there's 3 different kinds of light that
Okay.
people encounter.
Okay.
And the particular thing that happened to me was that I had a clear light experience, and so it's all about energy.
Well, yes.
and there was absolutely no question what was going on,
Yeah.
even though it didn't register with my physical eyes.
Okay.
It registered in another place.
I gotcha. Okay.
And
Okay.
so Mary Fran comes and scoops Nolan up out of his physical body.
Right.
I participate in that. And then what surprised me even more was that the two of them then turned and came over to me and embraced me. And then the
Oh.
three of us left and went to the light.
You went with them.
I went with them. And it was extraordinary. I mean, I found myself in this place of extraordinary love and compassion, and where everything was connected to everything else. It was, um, well, it's beyond description. It's just so wonderful. And I knew that, but my whole attention is on Mary Fran and Nolan,
Okay.
because the three of us then had a chance to be together.
Oh.
We had a chance to affirm our love and affection for each other.
Uh,
And, that's important because Mary Fran and Nolan were in the car accident, and I was at work. So we weren't in the same place.
mhm,
We had a chance then to say a proper goodbye, if
mm,
there's such a thing in that circumstance.
mhm.
And we had a chance then also just to be together. And at some point, it felt complete, where it wasn't like, oh, I got to go now or anything. It was just like, oh, we've done what we need to do. And they turned, and Mary Fran took Nolan further into the light, and I came back to my physical body that was sitting on the windowsill next to Brother Willie.
Right.
So that's like part one of three. I just wonder if want me to keep going, or you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
pause?
Well, no, and my only question is, did anybody realize that you were out of your body? You know
No,
what I mean?
but that becomes important. So I'm
Okay.
going to circle around to that.
Okay. No, keep going. I'm really
Okay,
interested.
so here we go, Nancy, part two.
Okay.
So I'm up in the light with Mary Fran and Nolan, and we're communicating, and 100% of my consciousness is up there in the light.
Wow.
And 100% of my consciousness is sitting on the windowsill next to Willie with all of the relatives in the room.
Right.
And I know this because it was like the ecstasy of the universe was trying to burst out of me. And as a result, my face just had this joyous expression. I had this huge grin on my face because it was all so wonderful.
Mhm.
And if anybody had looked at me at that moment, I would have been entirely inappropriate.
Right.
And so the only thing I could think of to do was to take and cover my face with my hands and just sit there on the windowsill until I could regain my composure. Well, that happened when that part of me that was with Mary Fran and Nolan came back to my physical body. I mean, I didn't really have a word for it then. Well, I
Mhm.
certainly didn't then. I do now. It's by location. I was in two places at the same time. I was in the light with Mary Fran and Nolan,
Okay.
and I was in the room with all of the other grieving relatives. And
Okay.
it wasn't like I was, I was 100% in both places, which mathematically doesn't make any sense, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah,
You get the idea.
I do.
So, um, there I was able to, when that part of me that was in the light came back into my physical body, it took me a moment to, like put myself together again. And then I could,
Mhm.
step off of the windowsill and and hug people and cry on each other's shoulders and lend support and do what you do when somebody who's that precious um, leaves you.
Yeah, but like, didn't you? I got to interrupt you. Weren't you like, hey, you guys, I just went up there and said goodbye and it was really cool and he's fine. And didn't you want to just say that? Or were you afraid to say that or what?
Um, I would tell you that I couldn't have articulated that at that time.
Okay. Okay.
It was it's taking me a long time, like almost 40
Ah,
years,
to process it.
to process that and to come up. I had to
Uh-huh.
have some significant experiences in the non-physical universe to be able to say, oh, that's what happened. Oh,
Okay.
that's how communication happens in the non-physical world. I mean, let's face it, English is incredibly restrictive.
Yeah.
It puts boundaries on concepts. It has some kinds of subtle meanings, but when you're in the non-physical universe and the communication is telepathic,
Mm-hmm.
so much clearer, and you know exactly what the other person is feeling,
Oh, okay.
thinking.
You're not interpreting it incorrectly. I
No,
love it. I love
this
it.
is soul to soul, and
Right.
did you get it?
Yeah.
And to try to explain that immediately after it just happened, I would
Yeah.
have been, well, I was absolutely tongue tied. I didn't know what happened. And, part of me, this is the part that winds up being really difficult is, when I tell this story, I can touch back into that place of wonder and love and unity, but
Mm-hmm.
at the very same time, it's it's grief. At the moment of my greatest grief, I'm in my greatest joy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really a complicated emotion for me to try to describe how
Mm-hmm.
wonderful and awful that was all at the same time.
Yeah. Were you religious when this happened to you at all?
No, I
Okay.
mean, I grew up in a mainline Presbyterian church.
Okay.
See the Celtic cross behind you.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm a Scot, you know.
aye, lass. I'm too.
Are you really?
Clan Innes, due east of Inverness.
Okay. Oh my goodness. McConaughey in the Highlands, you know.
In the Highlands, eh?
Yes.
Yes, and Innes married a Monroe, which is the clan due west of Inverness. And in my mind, what happened is that they met at a pub, kiss, kiss, moved to Iowa.
All right. I got to
That's
tell you
how
this.
we.
This is going to blow your mind. This is going to blow your mind. So I was given the family Bible from the 1700s.
Yeah.
And the earliest entry is the marriage um, from my, I don't know, great, 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 great grandmother in Inverness, Scotland.
I love it.
And I
And
went
it's a
to
beautiful
Inverness.
city.
Yes, well, I'll tell you the end. I'll tell you really quick. I went to Inverness years ago, it's probably 20 years ago, to try to go back further to try to find, anything before that time. And I think her name was Prudence McConaughey. And I couldn't find anything in the records there. They were really nice in Inverness, but I couldn't find anything beyond. Isn't that funny?
I love it.
I've been
Yeah.
there. It's cool. It's a cool place. So you're a Scot and you've spent some time there too. That's awesome.
Hmm.
That's awesome. Well,
In
I
fact,
have so go ahead.
I should finish my story before we get off into
Okay,
all
yeah,
kinds
yeah.
of
Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish what you're
Scots and
saying.
whiskey and kilts and all that.
Okay.
Um,
So you
so
grew up in the Presbyterian church.
and so no, I went to church with my folks, but it wasn't, you know, uh, I wasn't steeped in it. I wasn't, particularly spiritual or had
Okay.
spiritual experiences. It's just, it's
Okay.
what you do as a kid, and um, let's just say I was historically related to the Presbyterian Church. How's that?
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. So when this happened and you went up with them, I mean, you weren't totally shocked. You knew that there had to be something beyond this, or had you not really considered it?
I was totally blown away.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And especially in the way that it happened. And um, that was a really distant concept to me, that Do we have a soul? Okay, so a soul goes up to heaven, and you get a chance to go see them again sometime, somewhen. It just,
Hmm.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it wasn't a central part of my life or anything. Anywho, I'm at the I'm in the hospital room. We've now all cried on each other's shoulders, and we've gone home. So here's part 3 of the story,
Okay.
and we have to fast forward 15 years.
Oh,
I'm doing my doctoral work at the University of St. Thomas, which is Minnesota's largest private university,
okay.
and it's in the School of Education, and I'm writing my dissertation about people who've had near-death experiences.
Well,
And I'm trying to
go
find
figure.
And I'm trying to find people that I can talk to that I can interview. And I'm having a hell of a time because I keep running into HIPAA laws. Hospitals won't help me, and assisted
Um,
living facilities won't help me, and nursing homes won't help. Anyway, so finally I started writing people. And one of the things that I did was I wrote to the Randall family and said, the girls in that family had all tended to be in the healthcare professions or the helping professions. And did they know anyone that I could interview? Well, one of the sisters, who wants to remain anonymous, so I'll just call her the sister, wrote me back and said, Scott, I had a near death experience a couple of years ago. Do you want to interview me?
hmm,
Absolutely. So we arrange it, and I record the whole thing. And this is what she told me.
okay.
She said that she had taken a new medication and was at her parents' home and decided to go upstairs, take a nap. The next thing she knows, she's in this world of gray, and out of this gray comes Mary Fran. And Mary Fran walks right up to her, puts a finger in her chest, and says, "You've got to go back, and you've got to go back now."
Oh my goodness.
And the sister looks at her and said, "Well, it's been a long time, Mary Fran. It's nice to see you too." And Mary Fran was having none of it.
Oh, wow.
Had the hands on her hips, and she did the finger wag thing, and she goes, "You've got to go back, and you've got to go back now."
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was with such energy and such force that it startled the sister. She wakes up in the physical world, opens her eyes, and when she does, there is an EMT that's above her, and he's turning away, and he says to his companion, he said, "I've done everything I know how to do. We lost her." The companion partner is standing looking down, and he sees the sister's eyes open up, and he's going, "Whoa, we got her. She's back." And,
I don't
they
mean to
do,
laugh, but it's kind of comical. Like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
sorry.
timing is a little close here.
Oh my goodness.
So, they do their magic. They get her to the hospital. They get her all fixed up, and she's fine and still is fine. So that's the end of her story.
That's crazy.
And I'm packing up my gear, and I had this thought, which was, sister, when Nolan made his final transition, something really unusual happened to me in that hospital room. I wondered if anything unusual happened to you. And I'm looking at her, and her eyes get just big as saucers. So,
Oh my.
so taking that as a yes, I quick turned back on the recording equipment and said, "All right, tell you what, you tell me your story first, and then I'll tell you my story, and then we'll compare notes." This is what she told me.
Okay.
You see, I remember the moment really well. But she said, "I was standing bedside, and I know that because you were sitting on the windowsill next to our brother Willie. I said, that's correct.
Mhm.
And she said, when Nolan flatlined, what she experienced was Mary Fran coming across the veil, scooping Nolan up out of his physical body. And she was able to participate in that reunion. And then, to her surprise, the two of them turned to her, embraced her, and took her to the light, where they were able to communicate for a time. And then she came back to her physical body.
Same thing.
Nancy, it was the exact same experience that I had. And she used almost exactly the same language that I did. And so for 15 years, I had been wondering,
Oh
did I
my
really experience that?
gosh.
Was this really real? Was I, is this something I made up because I was in such grief? Instant.
Crazy.
All that doubt was gone in an instant because somebody had just explained exactly how my experience had gone.
Now,
And
you know what I'm wondering, right? And the audience is probably wondering too. So did everybody in the room go?
no,
Because wasn't that your first thought? Like, I wonder who else went,
I
right?
wonder who else went. But that is, it's a, I understand it's a classic shared death experience with multiple participants. That's
That's
kind of the
crazy.
technical language for it.
Wow.
And, um, and we know why it happens now, why. So the next question, was, well, why some people and not others,
Okay.
right?
Right.
That's where I was going. And so here's what we know about shared death experiences is that, um, first off, there has to be a significant heart connection between you and the person who's making the transition.
That makes
So,
sense.
so in this case, it was both Mary Fran and Nolan, but in particular, Nolan. And that's because, his biological father had disavowed any knowledge of his actions. He did not participate in the family in any way. He didn't support them. He didn't
Okay.
acknowledge them.
Okay.
And so Mary Fran chose not to tell Nolan who his biological father was.
Okay.
And so Nolan's growing up. He's now in the first grade, soon to be in the second grade. And, he wants to have a dad like every other first grader has a dad. And so when I entered into their life in a significant way, we started to have a really nice bond.
Cool.
And I already had this loving bond with Mary Fran, so I'm really connected to the two of them. And so that's important, that there's this heart connection. The second thing that's important is that you're available and receptive. Well, I wasn't doing anything. I'm sitting on the windowsill and I'm watching the heart monitor. So was I in a quasi meditative state? Maybe,
Maybe.
sure. You
Yeah.
know, I wasn't talking to anybody. I wasn't, actively grieving. I was just sitting there waiting. Third ingredient that, is required is that there's an invitation from the person making the
Mm.
transition. In this case, it'd be like Nolan, back to the person in the physical world saying, don't you want to come with me? And they have a lot easier time adjusting their energy to those of us that are in the physical world. And then that invitation then essentially pulls us into the light.
Right. I want to ask you something real quick. It feels like it really helped your grieving process.
Well, it certainly changed my grieving process.
Well, yeah, because instead of making it such a horrible thing, it actually was a joyful thing. Which it should be when people go to the light. We have it all backwards, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, it was awful because I lost the physical presence
Well,
of
that's
both
what I'm
Mary Fran
saying.
and Nolan. So you got both these things going on. And yes, it was an extraordinary experience. So much so that in my head, what I tried to figure, what was going on was if I could be with them in the light
Mhm.
and I did it once, I can do
Oh,
it again.
oh,
I just have to figure out how.
oh.
And so, I've spent the next 40 years of my life trying to figure out how to make that happen in a way that is easy and understandable and, you know, and have the tools to navigate around in the non-physical world. So, yeah, it's taken a while, but I was able to establish that connection with Mary Fran and Nolan, and that connection exists to this day.
Okay. Now let's talk about that connection you have today. Because I know, like, when my sister's in the room or if my dad's here or whatever, and I just talk to him. But what kind of connection do you have with them now?
Yeah, it's like that, isn't it? It's,
Mm-hmm.
they're in the room and you just know it's them.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a visual thing. I call it an energetic signature. Oh,
Right.
yeah, Nolan, he's right there. And so it's interesting because um, Mary Fran was really present right after her transition. And then she went away for a while and she'd come
Mm.
back and we'd catch up and then she'd go away for a while. And I wasn't able, she kind of moved in and out of my life. Nolan, on the other hand, has never left. He is
Oh,
always with me, always.
really?
And I can touch base with him well, he's right there. I can touch base with him anytime. And we have this really extraordinary relationship. And
Nice.
so for your viewers, what what happens because it's been so long, um, Nolan and I have a place where we meet.
Okay.
So all I have to do is picture in my head it's a park bench like the kind you'd see in Central Park with kind of the curly iron at the end and it's got wood slats and it's on a gravel path and there's
Yeah.
grass around and trees. It's a lovely place.
Yeah.
Sunshine, birds, flowers, great. Anyway, so all I have to do is to picture that bench in my mind and that is the nonverbal cue for Nolan to meet me there.
Okay.
So we sit and we have a conversation. And Nolan will present himself to me at different ages. So if he's feeling young and playful, he'll be 7 again. If he wants to talk about an adult subject, he's 41.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you. So when
Yep,
you go to the other side, what you've realized is even though he left as a 7-year-old, he grew
he grew
on the other side.
on the other side. Hmm.
And do you ask him what he's doing right now?
Oh, I
Like,
haven't
what's he up
really.
to? Like, what's he been doing? And what's it like for him over there?
So, okay, so so there was one day when we had a meeting. I picture myself on the bench and he came.
Okay.
And he's a young man, late 20s, early 30s. He's dressed in a very dark suit, might have been a black suit, white tie, a white shirt, skinny tie. And he's
Hmm.
got that, tie clip that's up too high, So what I got from that was that this was a life that he had. He was living a life in the physical right now, and his and it's taking place in the 50s or the 60s, somewhere in there, because that's the way his clothing looked. And he sits down on the bench, doesn't say anything, except I get that information from him that he has come to me from this other life that he's living currently. And he opens up his briefcase. And in the briefcase, there's a gun, it's a pistol. And he tells me that he is a law enforcement officer. So something like a U.S. Marshal or, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that he has had to kill somebody in the line of duty.
Oh, wow.
And even though they're trained for that, even though they, tell you what it's going to be like, and that it was, necessary for him to do his job and to save his life and the life of others, it was tearing him up inside.
Okay.
And he wanted to talk about that. And he wanted to talk about that with his dad.
Oh,
And
Scott, you're getting all choked up on this one.
it's it's the kind of a conversation that you really would have with your son in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
Only our lives are still interconnected, but it's outside of time and space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. And it means that he
He loves you.
thank you.
He loves you. Well, if he's standing right there, now I have more questions. So if he's standing there, does he have a message, or can you pick up a message or anything like that for humanity? We're down here trying to learn our lessons.
Yeah, he said whatever Scott's telling you, it's all true.
Ah, that's
And
cute.
and he said that's what's important, is for people to for people to drop their sense of what they think is true,
Mhm.
and begin to embrace possibilities of not only the physical and the non-physical world, but possibilities of what it means to live outside of time and space, and
Mhm.
that we can really have this connection of one timeline to another,
Mhm.
to use a phrase.
Mhm.
um, because yeah, so what he said was that, because what it means is that um, we can share and be a part of each other's lives, um, even though that we aren't physically close to each other.
Right. Thank you for that. Tell him thank you for
Well, you
that.
got it.
Okay. Well, no, and that's true. I will say that I went and did something yesterday. My dad's been gone for a while, but I was like, Dad, did you see what I did? It's so funny, sometimes you feel just like a little kid. You don't want to tell your dad, even though he's gone, what you did, but he heard me and I know he did, and I know he watches, and there's comfort in that. There's
Mhm.
comfort,
There is comfort in that.
you
And
know, there's comfort in this relationship you have with him. And what about Mary Frances? Do you still have her around a lot?
um, yes, and like I said, yes and no.
She
Sometimes
goes and comes back.
she goes and comes back, and a lot of it has to do with um, the lessons that I need to learn in the physical.
Okay.
You know, you need to learn
Okay.
this one without me, Scott, and then we'll come back and talk about it later.
I love it.
Like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
fine.
They can't interfere so much. So you've interviewed a lot of people. How many people have you interviewed now who've had near-death experiences?
I don't know, hundreds and hundreds. Um,
Okay.
Maybe close to 1,000. I don't know. It's a lot.
Well, and we don't have a ton of time. My clock, for some reason, is not showing up. So God wants us to just go for it today, I think. So I I'm just wondering, there's so many people that have had this experience. As I was preparing for the show and I was writing things down, I actually wrote down, do you think this is part of our life plan when we plan this? Or do you think it's an exit point? Because we all have these exit points. And then I kind of thought to myself, no, it's part of the plan so that I kind of answered my own question, but I want to know what you think, so that we learn. Is that what this is?
Yeah, it is what it is. And
Yeah.
um, so, growing up a Christian,
Yeah.
um, this is, I call this um, anyway, um, I'm
You
having a
lost
brain
it.
fade.
That's
No,
okay.
Jesus was betrayed by
Judas.
Judas. Thank you. So
Mhm.
this is my Judas principle,
Okay.
which goes like this. So Jesus is planning his life in the physical world, yeah?
Hmm.
And he says, I can't be Jesus unless somebody betrays me. Which of you wants that role? And
God, that would suck.
and it has to be his best friend. It has to be. Who else would do that for somebody else? Somebody who loved you so much that they would be willing to be
Betray you.
misunderstood and be hated by a quarter of the world's population for 2,000 years. I mean, that's some heavy karma. But it has to be somebody who loved Jesus that much in order to enable Jesus to do what he had to do. So I extrapolate that over to Mary, Fran, and Nolan, that we arranged that ahead of time,
Mhm.
and that their sacrifice allowed me to grow in ways that I needed to grow, and it could only happen that way.
Mhm.
And so it's with a profound sense of gratitude for the gifts that they have given me. And at the same time, it's complicated because it's, I had to lose them in the physical world. And to
You
make it
know.
even more complicated,
Mhm.
I have a wonderful wife. We're
I was
coming
going to
up.
ask you. I was just going to ask you if you ever married after
Yeah,
this. You
we
did.
we're coming
It's
up on
so
our
cool.
we are coming up on our 20th anniversary this summer.
Did you have kids?
Uh, we we were able to get pregnant once, and it miscarried. So
Okay.
we have
But you do have a son. So,
I I have two stepkids from my first marriage, and Ann has two adopted kids from her first marriage. So
oh,
we got
you got a
grandkids.
ton. You got a
We're doing
ton.
fine, thank
I
you.
love
And
it.
being part of Ann's family with the 9 kids, and they were very Catholic, which means they all had a there's a raft of nieces and nephews. I quit counting at 46. So,
That's wonderful.
it's
That's
just,
wonderful.
yeah, it
Well,
makes family reunions really fun.
I love it. Well, I want a blessing. I'm going to say this is a blessing. And I bet you look at it like that, don't you?
Yeah, it is a blessing, and it has allowed me to meet extraordinary people like you, Nancy,
Thank you. You too.
who um, have given so much to me in terms of their perspective and their support. And, here I am doing research in near death and now shared death experiences that I never would have been able to do before. And, I trained with the Monroe Institute and was a facilitator with them for 35 years.
That's crazy.
And so, I've had a lot of experience of guiding people into the non physical universe. And I never would have done that if it hadn't been for all
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
what happened on a beautiful summer day.
I love it. Well, talk about, before we get out of here, talk about those 6 best-selling CDs. They're guided meditations. Are those for people who, and this is my question, are they for everybody? Are they for people who've had near-death experiences? Talk to me about that.
Yep. So these CDs are for people who would like to explore the non-physical universe, but they want to do it kind of in a safe way.
Got it.
So
Okay.
these are guided meditations,
Okay.
and they take different components of a near-death experience, and we go and explore those. So, case in point, there's one CD that's just about meeting your guide. Very helpful fellow to have on the other side is guides. And then there's another one on the tunnel. And there's an exercise about the family reunion and about meeting divine beings and a life review and that area of life between lives. So there's, these different segments of near death experiences you can explore. And what these CDs do is they change your energy level so that it can most easily match the vibration level of what it is that we're doing. So there's an energy that's associated with meeting your guide. It exists easily on a particular frequency, and the tunnel exists at a frequency, and the reunion exists on another frequency, and meeting the divine being is on another frequency. And binaural beats happens to be really good. That audio technology, it's really good at raising up our vibratory rate to the rate that you can match, and it's really easy then to
It's
just
like a
apply.
radio. It's like
Yeah,
radio waves, you guys. We got to
thank
take our
you.
frequency up, and they can only bring it down so far. So we have to get it up so we can match, so we can connect. Right?
Yep, that's exactly. We've got to come up, they come down a little bit,
Yeah.
bingo, match, and then off you go.
Okay. We got to get out of here pretty much for today. But how do people find you? How do people connect with you? How do they get your CDs?
Thank you for asking. I
Yes.
appreciate that.
Yes.
The best place is at my website. It is neardeathmeditations.com, neardeathmeditations.com. And on that website, there are my CDs. It's a nice way to put your toe in the water. We have a 2-day workshop where we take you back and forth, and then we have a 5.5-day workshop where we make that trip probably 25 times into the non-physical universe, and we give you something like 40 different tools so that you can hold that state and then know what to do when you're there. So, how do you navigate in the non-physical universe? It's different than being here in the physical. So yeah, we teach you how to do that.
You teach us how to
And
go out of our bodies. That's crazy stuff. Okay. You've got a class, a 7-week course that starts on April the 26th, you guys. If people are interested, is that still going?
oh yeah, that's going
Okay.
big time. It's through the Shift Network, and we meet
Okay.
every Wednesday at noon Eastern time for
Okay.
2 hours, and we march through those very fundamental tools and techniques to allow you to head into the non-physical universe. And I got to tell you, I mean, it's counterintuitive, Nancy, but when you sit and talk about death and you talk about near death experiences and the transition, um, it's just filled with joy and wonder and reunion. It's more fun than one person should have.
I'm
We
gonna
really
have
have a good time.
I was gonna say I'm gonna have to have you come back because I have like way more questions here to ask you. And we're like been talking for an hour. So yeah, because there's like so much I want to know. So I hope you'll come back and visit me again. But
I'd
you
love to. We
oh,
we
thank you.
we had a good time, didn't we?
We do have fun, yes. So you guys, it's Dr. Scott Taylor if you want to find out more about him. And he is the president of Expanded Awareness Institute. It's EAI. Scott, thanks for coming on the show. I truly appreciate it.
You're welcome, Nancy. I had a blast.
Cool. Awesome. All right, you guys, we're going to get out of here for today. If you want an angel reading, go to my website, nancyyearout.com, book your date and time. I hope everybody has a fabulous week and God bless.